precisely 1:15. This is the news on Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. News is edited by Danushka Madhavela, read by Sabrina Zawahir. The headlines. Sri Lanka considers use of National Identity Card number for tax registration. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources expressed appreciation for the efforts taken by the Sri Lankan government to turn the economy around. Foreign Ministry pursues all avenues for repatriation of Sri Lankan victims trafficked into Myanmar. U.S. to provide fourth Coast Guard ship soon. Approval received to import 90 million eggs from India. And in world news, Trump calls on Alabama to protect IVF treatment. In sports, Lewis Hamilton says Mercedes improved but Red Bull still clear in F1 pre-season testing. Now the local news in detail. Sri Lanka is contemplating the use of the existing National Identity Card number to register for taxation in place of the taxation identification number that all citizens above the age of 18 were recently asked to obtain. State Minister of Finance Ranjit Simbalapitiya told reporters that a discussion in this regard was held at the Presidential Secretariat on recently. He said the discussion had focused on the possibility of using existing biographical data of citizens already recorded by various state bodies that routinely deal with members of the public. TIN registration has been made compulsory for all citizens over the age of 18, with the January 31st deadline to be further extended. The State Minister said at the time that the government intends to shift the balance in direct versus indirect tax, which currently stands at 30% and 40% respectively. The United States Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources, Richard Verma, who called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday, expressed appreciation for the efforts taken by the Sri Lankan government to turn the economy around. During the discussions, the President outlined the progress of the debt restructuring, along with several key economic reforms measures, including the Agriculture Modernization Program. Commenting on matters related to global security, the Deputy Secretary thanked the Sri Lankan government for their assistance in the ongoing naval operations in the Red Sea. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in coordination with the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Myanmar, continues to make every effort to rescue and repatriate the Sri Lankan nationals who have become victims of human trafficking and are trapped in Myanmar. These Sri Lankans have been coerced into various outline and online scams in multiple locations within the Mayawadi area of Myanmar under the pretext of legitimate job offers in the IT field. Foreign Minister Ali Sabri took this issue up with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Myanmar, requesting urgent intervention to rescue Sri Lankan nationals. The Embassy of Sri Lanka in Myanmar has also been consistently bringing to the notice of the Myanmar authorities the serious situation of Sri Lankan victims enslaved in cybercriminal activities by traffickers, urging the authorities to take immediate action to rescue the victims from these distressing circumstances. Consequently, the government of Myanmar has assured that all measures will be taken towards rescuing the victims from the grip of traffickers as early as possible. This news is brought to you by Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Continuing local news. The annual festival of Mass of St. Anthony's Church, Katchadivu, was consecrated this morning. Jaffna Diocesan Vicar, Reverend Father Joseph Jebaratnam, presided over the festival procession. At the end of the Mass, the Eucharistic and Additional Secretary L. Elogovan attended the annual festival of St. Anthony's Church in Katchadivu. More than 4,300 Sri Lankan devotees participated. This year, none of the South Indian devotees attended. For the benefit of the devotees, other facilities including transport, accommodation, sanitation and food were arranged. The annual festival of St. Anthony's Church in Kachadevu started yesterday evening with the hoisting of the flag. The Department of Christian Religious Affairs, Jaffna District Secretariat, Jaffna Bishop House, Nedunthew Divisional Secretariat, Navy and Police have jointly made preparations for the festival. Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources Richard Verma yesterday announced that US will provide another medium-endurance cutter to Sri Lanka soon. Verma, who was aboard the SLNS Vijayabahu, one of 3 former U.S. Coast Guard cutters transferred by the U.S. to the Sri Lanka Navy, said that the Department of State obligated $9 million in foreign military financing to support this effort. The Deputy Secretary of State hoped that the ship would increase Sri Lanka's ability to patrol its exclusive economic zone, monitor its search and rescue area, and provide additional security for ships from all nations that transit the busy sea lanes of the Indian Ocean. That ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
In terms of the provisions of the Financial Transactions Reporting Act No. 6 of 2006, the Financial Intelligence Unit of Sri Lanka entered into a Memorandum of Understanding with the Excise Department of Sri Lanka. The MOU, inked on January 9th at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka to exchange information related to investigations and prosecutions of money laundering, terrorist financing and other related crimes. Money laundering and terrorist financing are financial crimes with a global presence which could threaten the stability of national and global economic and financial systems. The MOU between the Excise Department of Sri Lanka and the Financial Intelligence Unit would enable both institutions to exchange information which is vital for prevention, detection and prosecution of such offences. That was main news.
The main news story was brought to you by Sinhala Mahatmya.
Moving on to Watchlight. Land valuation indicator for Colombo district indicated a slowdown on a year-on-year basis, recording a growth rate of 7.1% during the second half of 2023. This slowdown could be observed in all sub-indicators of land valuation indicator, namely residential, commercial and industrial land valuation indicators, which recorded annual increases of 8.8%, 6.7% and 5.9% respectively. Land valuation indicator indicated a deceleration on semi-annual basis as well, registering a moderate growth of 2.1% during the second half of 2023 compared to the first half of 2023. This deceleration was largely attributable to the slower increase in industrial land valuation indicator, followed by commercial and residential land valuation indicators compared to the first half of 2023. That came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Headlines of the world news. Trump calls on Alabama to protect IVF treatment. Israel's PM Netanyahu lays out Gaza plan for after the war. U.S. jets intercept high-altitude balloon over Utah. Now the world news in detail. Donald Trump has said he supports the availability of IVF treatment, joining a growing number of Republicans who are seeking to distance themselves from an Alabama court ruling on the issue. The state's top court ruled last week that frozen embryos have the same rights as children and people can held liable for destroying them. At least 3 clinics paused IVF treatment in the wake of the ruling. On Friday, Mr. Trump called on Alabama to find an immediate solution. Early on Friday, in an apparent effort to ease concerns in the state, Alabama's Republican Attorney General Steve Marshall said he did not intend to prosecute IVF providers or their families. Mr. Trump's comments were in his first on the issue and signaled his opposition to a ruling which some Republicans fear could harm them electorally by hindering plans to win back suburban women as well as swing voters. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has laid out his vision for a post-war Gaza. Under his plan, Israel could control security indefinitely, and Palestinians with no links to groups hostile to Israel would run the territory. The U.S., Israel's major ally, wants the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority to govern Gaza after the war. But the short document which Mr. Netanyahu presented to ministers last night makes no mention of the PA. He has previously ruled out a post-war role for the internationally backed body. He envisages a demilitarized Gaza. Israel would be responsible for removing all military capability beyond that necessary for public order. There could be a southern closure on the territory border with Egypt to prevent smuggling, both under and overground. U.S. military aircraft has intercepted a high-altitude balloon flying over the western part of the country and determined it was non-threatening. The small object is not maneuverable and presents no hazard to flight safety, U.S. officials said, though its origin and purpose were unknown. The aircraft was spotted on Friday over Colorado and Utah, drifting east. Last year, the U.S. shot down a Chinese balloon after it crossed the country from Alaska to the east coast. Friday's object, detected floating around 44,000 feet, prompted U.S. officials to scramble fighter jets to investigate. NORAD, the military command responsible for air defense over the U.S. and Canada, said its fighter jets intercepted the balloon over Utah. That ends World News. Prior to concluding the headlines of the World News once again. Trump calls on Alabama to protect IVF treatment. Israel's PM Netanyahu lays out Gaza plan for after the war. U.S. jets intercepted high-altitude balloon over Utah. That ends World News. Moving on to development news. The Foreign Affairs Ministry, in coordination with the Sri Lankan mission in Myanmar, continues to make every effort to rescue and repatriate Sri Lankan nationals who have become victims of human trafficking and are trapped in Myanmar. The Foreign Ministry, in a statement yesterday evening, said that Foreign Minister Ali Sabri took this issue up with the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Myanmar, requesting urgent intervention to rescue Sri Lankan nationals. That was development news.
Moving on with sports news.
First, we have got news about Formula One. Lewis Hamilton says Mercedes have definitely improved their car for this season, but Red Bull clearly are out in the distance. The seven-time champion said his team had done a great job in redesigning their car after abandoning their previous discredited philosophy. A year ago, Hamilton was frustrated Mercedes had dismissed his concerns about their 2022 car and continued with the same design philosophy into the following season. But the new Mercedes is now conventional in following the design trend started by Red Bull 2 years ago. He ended the final day of pre-season testing in Bahrain with the 12th fastest time, having taken part in only the slower first season. More in sports news, it's football. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola believes Manchester United will be back with the help of new investor Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe's deal to buy a 27.7% stake in Manchester United was completed on 20th February. The British billionaire says he hopes United can knock cross-city rival City off their perch. That was sports news.
Go ekathiana youth ekat life eke change ekat niyamata set wenna as wahagena dekapu hina habe karanna youth ekat niyamata set wenna friendship එක menna.
The all new NSB Ithru Mithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Trade, Commerce and Food Security Ministry Secretary Ranjit Atapathu yesterday said that approval has been received for the import of 30 million eggs for the upcoming festive season. He said that the government had given approved for the import of 60 million eggs from India for the consumption in the country. He said that the total number of eggs to be imported from India will exceed 90 million accordingly. Lanka Satosa Chairman Pasandayapa Bewardana said that Lak Satosa will receive egg stocks from India until the Sinhala and Tamil New Year season is over. That was Business News.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Go ekakthiyana youth eකට life එකේ change එකට නියමෙට set වෙන්න ඇස් වහගෙන දැකපු හින හැබැ කරන්න youth එකට නියමෙට set වෙන friendship එක මෙන්න.
The all-new NSB Ithru account, NSB IM, a plan for your dream.
Moving on to economic news. Central Bank, at a discussion with the media on its monetary policy yesterday, says that the rebound of domestic economic activity witnessed in the latter part of 2023 is expected to continue, assisting the economy to gradually reach its potential over the medium term with the help of appropriate policies. The overall real GDP growth for 2023 is anticipated to be moderately negative, representing a milder contraction compared to 2022, while economic growth is expected to remain positive during 2024. That was economic news.
Weather report.
Finally, we take a look at the weather report. The Met Department says showers or thunder showers will occur at several places in western, southern, Sabaragamuwa, central, northwestern and Uva provinces in the evening or night. Misty conditions can be expected at some places in western, Sabaragamuwa, central and Uva provinces and in Gaul and Mathura districts during the morning. The public is kindly requested to take adequate precautions to minimize damages caused by temporary localized strong winds and lightning during thunder showers. This weather report was published this evening at 7:30 p.m. Further details could be obtained by visiting the official website of the department. That was the weather report. Prior to concluding this bulletin of news, the headlines once again. Sri Lanka considers use of national identity card number for tax registration. The U.S. Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources expressed appreciation for the efforts taken by the Sri Lankan government to turn the economy around. Foreign Ministry pursues all avenues for repatriation of Sri Lankan victims trafficked into Myanmar. U.S. to provide 4th Coast Guard ship soon. Approval received to import 90 million eggs from India. With that, we conclude the news, and over to my friend and certainly yours, who's all geared up to keep you entertained with a wonderful collection of music indeed. Over to you, Ramesh.
Thank you, Sabrina, and that was Sabrina Sabah here with this afternoon's news bulletin, and may I take this opportunity to wish her a pleasant afternoon. Good afternoon, and you're tuned to Radio Sri Lanka with the time just coming up to 1:33. Lunchtime music is coming your way. Well, lunchtime music is coming away right after this commercial interlude. Then afterwards, at 2 o'clock, we have your choice. And the number to call is 2694316 to get your requests and dedications on air.